to talk to you about something very difficult this morning. It's also something very personal and political and controversial. I promise I will be honest. I will not be politically correct. Because saying no is often about saying yes to something else. And sometimes we have to figure out what we're saying yes to so that we can figure out why and how we have to or we're called to say no. I'm going to talk about reproductive justice and abortion this morning because the way things are going in this country right now, it's conceivable that we will need another underground railroad soon to ferry women to the health care services they need in order that they be free to determine their own futures. Because in state after state right now, laws are being passed that are forcing reproductive clinics to shut down. So I was amazed when I heard Dr. Willie Parker on the radio a few months ago. You may or may not know of him. I'm not sure what I was doing. I think I was cleaning the house. But something he said caught my attention, and I started to catch a phrase here and there over the sound of the vacuum until I finally turned it off and sat down to listen. It's a fundamental human right, he said, for a woman to be able to determine her own fate and her own future. I think that's when I stopped vacuuming. I am a Christian, he continued, and I've been called to do this work. I struggled against it for 14 years because of what I was taught about the sanctity of human life. But compassion overcame creed. Compassion for the realities real women face. And so I went back to school so I could learn to perform abortions. I'm paraphrasing all of this, what Dr. Parker said on the radio, but it was his next words that really stuck. When faced with a choice between the life of the woman before me or the potential life of the child she is carrying, I choose the life of the woman without hesitation. And I don't mean her life has to be in danger. I mean, for whatever reason or reasons, she is choosing an abortion because she can't afford another baby, because she's in school, because the baby's father will leave her if she does, because she already has several children, because she's too young, or because she's too old, because she'll lose her job. Whatever her reason is, the woman's life matters more. He just came out and said it. I had never heard anyone else say it so straight. You know those moments when your heart misses a beat and you know you'll never be the same again, even though you don't know exactly why yet? It was one of those moments for me. Even though I was raised to believe it, to believe what he was saying, raised to expect that I would go to college, get a good job, raise a family, and then juggle the demands of family and work as so many other women do. So when I got pregnant at 22, after college, but before I had chosen my career, my family expected me to get an abortion. They were surprised when I wanted to talk about other options, like having the baby. They knew I didn't have a way to make a good living yet, not with my bachelor's degree in Russian studies. They knew that my live-in boyfriend, now my husband, came from a poor family and wouldn't be able to care for me in the fashion to which I was accustomed. They knew raising a child was hard work, and they didn't have time to help me. At least that was my impression and the message I heard. That's not the way upper-middle-class families do things, darling. I was just about to start midwifery school. I remember calling the school and asking if I could attend with a baby. They told me it would be hard, that I'd probably want to wait and postpone coming to school. That wasn't part of the plan either, waiting. So I called the clinic and scheduled my appointment. I remember the date. It was August 6th, 1986. After it was over, I went home and ate Ben & Jerry's straight out of the container. I had my first baby about 2 years later. I know the child I didn't have would be a year older than my first daughter. Except I wouldn't have the daughter I have now. It's a confusing subject to try to figure out. The good news this morning is that the old debate, pro-choice versus pro-life, is dying slowly. The hypocrisy on both sides is undoing the debate. The protesters, pundits, and politicians who make a loud noise about being pro-life often support the death penalty, approve of cutbacks on social services to women and children, and vote consistently for increasing the funds that we give on war, federally funded wars. It really doesn't make sense that one can be pure pro-life and very pro-death at the same time. On the other side of the debate, women who have abortions, and 1 out of 3 agnostic, Buddhist, Catholic, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, Pentecostal, Protestant, and Unitarian Universalist women do. And those women who are us women right here, right now, love life, believe in life, appreciate life, honor and respect life, as do the men, who are you, who support the women in their lives through their decisions to have an abortion. Even though on this side, we often don't like to talk about a fetus as a life, thus the hypocrisy. Still, for a majority of people in our country, it's clear one can be pro-choice and pro-life at the same time. The newly relevant conversation replacing the old debate is about reproductive justice, which is more about access to education and comprehensive reproductive health services for all women, regardless of income and education, and then about making sure every woman who wants one can have a safe and legal abortion. The truth is, I'm a product of my environment just as every other woman is. I made the choice the people in my family expected me to make. Was my choice just? Given my upbringing, my resources, my education, is it okay that I chose not to have a baby that would in all likelihood have been healthy and happy to be alive? I wasn't raped by my neighbor. I wasn't 13 and the victim of incest at the hands of my uncle. I had access to birth control. I knew how women got pregnant. My own health or life was not threatened by my pregnancy. Was my choice moral? I was single and secure, a college graduate, ready to discover my calling in the world. I was raised to believe and to think that my future mattered, and the life of this child counted less. I was taught to think I wasn't ready to be a mother, and I believed what I was taught. Was my choice just? We were young and in love. We were on a road trip and had fallen to the ground, swept away by our embrace. And so we made love right then and there on the crinkly fall leaves. It wasn't extremely comfortable. And there was no way to use my handy-dandy diaphragm out there in the woods. I remember the first signs and my first barely conscious doubts. Could I be? Not me. Really? Was my choice moral? I didn't think abortion was murder. I didn't know what it was, but I did know it was expected of me. 50% of pregnancies are unplanned. I'm rather average then, and I have lots of company. At a meeting a few months ago, in a circle of about 12 women right here at All Souls, a few of them had driven all the way from Oklahoma City, actually, to meet with our new All Souls for Reproductive Justice team, I told the women in the room about what I had heard Dr. Parker say on the radio. I told them how he just came right out and said it, that when faced with a choice between a real flesh and blood woman with her real and pressing needs in the present and her real and pressing desires for her future, and the imagined life of a yet-to-be-born child inside her, he chooses the needs and desires of the living woman in front of him each and every time, without guilt or shame or apology, with faith that he is respecting his God and the woman's connection to her own higher power. The room was very still. And then the women all breathed out a huge sigh at the same time. He just came out and said it without apology. A woman's life matters. A woman's will matters. I'm not sure how it's happened, but in the last 30 years or so, somehow the life of the potential baby has begun to blot out the life of the would-be mother. Some say it has to do with how clearly we can see the baby now with the use of ultrasound machines, and it's true. Baby pictures are now available and shareable on Facebook long before birth. But the basic human right to self-determination has not changed. And the basic argument about why abortion is not murder and must always be legal is simple and consistent. Life in a body, as a man or a woman, is a gift we're given. As a woman, I can offer my body, I can offer that gift as a partner in sex, as a mother in pregnancy, as a source of breast milk. It's no one else's right, though, to assume or to dictate how my body should or will be used. Every woman has the right then to withdraw the gift of her body from breastfeeding, from sex, and from pregnancy. We do not legally force anyone, man or woman, to offer parts of our bodies to others. We do not force women or men to give blood or donate organs, not even to their own children, not even to save their own child's life. So it follows that any and every woman can decide to withhold or withdraw the gift of her uterus. Her body is a gift to her, not to anyone else, not even automatically to her children. That women are usually very generous with the gift of their bodies, especially with their babies, is wonderful and something to be very thankful for. But no matter how innocent the recipient of the gift is, we can never assume, take for granted, dictate, or determine that a body will be given. No woman should be legally obliged to risk the threats to life and health that even a healthy pregnancy presents. And no woman should be denied the right to a pregnancy despite the risk a pregnancy presents. It's worth noting that pro-choice activists love to say that there's not a word about abortion in the Bible, at the same time that pro-life activists love to pull out any and every mention of a baby's life being protected in the Bible to support their argument that abortion is immoral, while they ignore all the passages in which the outright killing of mothers and children are promoted, protected, suggested, supported, condoned, and even commanded. Nevertheless, anyone who spent any time reading the Bible knows that there are a lot of steamy stories about sex, seduction, love and lust, lying, incest, prostitution, rape, betrayal, begetting, and barrenness sprinkled throughout the scriptures. Even Jesus touches and heals a woman who has been suffering from some sort of vaginal bleeding for 12 years or so. So it's really not a huge surprise that there's a wonderful story about reproductive justice in the book of Exodus in the very first chapter. I can almost hear the voice of the king of Egypt as he barks out his commands to the midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. When you are attending to the needs of the Israelite women, you shall not let any boy babies survive. The silence in the grand court must have been deafening. But a smart king knows that silence never means agreement. Do you understand? Do you hear me? Do not let any boy baby live past his birth. This is my commandment to you. Kneeling before the king, the young midwives surely nodded their heads, for what else could they do, as they tried to imagine what this command would mean for them and the families they served. Promptly dismissed, they quickly left the court, relieved to return to their own families and the work they knew so well. When they attended the next woman in labor, a girl child was born. As they cleaned up after mother and babe, they exchanged a quick glance of relief and shared a brief prayer of thanksgiving. The following birth was also a girl. After 5 baby girls in a row, the 2 midwives thought perhaps the Lord was sparing them this horrible deed. But the very next time, a boy was delivered into Pua's hands. When she saw, she turned her face away and then lifted her eyes to stare into Shipra's face. It seemed like forever that they stared at each other, with the echo of the king's command ringing in their ears, mixing with the cry of the newborn and the deep sighs of the mother. Finally, they looked away from each other and turned back to the work at hand. Pua wrapped the baby in swaddling clothes as Shipra attended to the needs of the mother. And so it continued, birth after birth after birth, until the king heard that male Hebrew babies were being welcomed into the world, into his kingdom. And so he ordered that the midwives be brought back into his court, and as they knelt in front of him for a second time, the king thundered at them again. What is this? Why are there newborn Israelite baby boys in the kingdom? Did I not tell you to kill them? Did I not command that if it be a son, he should die? Indeed, the midwives answered by nodding their heads. But the women give birth so easily, so quickly. The babies are all being born before we arrive. There's nothing we can do. There are so many ways to say no and yes. When does life begin? It's the question Shipra and Pua gambled everything on. Our own minister emeritus, the Reverend Dr. John Wolfe, once said, to inspire means to breathe. To expire means to die. Therefore, life begins when we breathe. Our ancient wise women midwives understood this, managing to save their own lives as well as the lives of the Hebrew boy babies with their common sense understanding of life and death. Thanks be to Yahweh, the king didn't tell them to kill the children before they were born. For surely any midwife worth her salt knew how to do so. Midwives have always helped women resolve their pregnancies one way or another, depending on the circumstances, just as doctors have done since they took women's reproductive health care out of the hands of midwives. For most of American history, abortion was just one part of women's messy business, like menstruation and miscarriage, better taken care of quietly and not talked about. Of course, physician-assisted abortions happened even when they were illegal. For example, when families in positions of power wanted to save unmarried daughters and their families from shame, when people wanted to limit family size, when people wanted to protect exhausted mothers from the rigors of more pregnancies and births, and when people wanted to prevent any damage to their reputation that might be done by the child of rape or incest or interracial romance being born. The campaign to criminalize abortion in this country was actually first waged by physicians in the late 19th century as they fought to take control of practices run by midwives and homeopaths. Those physicians used anti-immigrant, anti-Catholic, and racist feelings and attitudes to support their efforts. Would the West, quote, be filled with our own children or by those of aliens? The physician and anti-abortion leader Horatio R. Storer asked in 1868. This is a question our women must answer, for upon their loins depends the future destiny of our nation. Of course, for the white male physician of the 19th century, the intended future of our great nation belonged only to white Protestant descendants. For many years, midwives continued to attend to the needs of lower-income women, while physicians began to reap the profits made by serving wealthier women and their families. The number of abortions per capita in Victorian America, when abortion was illegal, was 7 or 8 times higher as it is today. And many, many women died. Making abortion illegal back then, and it would be the same now, did not decrease the number of procedures done, but it did increase the shame and humiliation women felt, not to mention the physical sufferings from complications and the deaths they faced. The toll of criminalizing abortion was so high that 100 years later, physicians joined with religious leaders and grassroots activists to make abortion legal again. In 1971, the year after decriminalization, the maternal mortality rate in New York State dropped 45%. Legalizing abortion was a public health triumph for women, on a par with the discovery of antibiotics. Today, however, inequality of access is on the rise. More than 80% of U.S. counties have no abortion providers, and some whole states have only 1 or 2. The Supreme Court has allowed and is allowing states to erect barrier after barrier to legal and safe abortion. For example, through the denial of public funds, parental consent and notification requirements, mandatory delays, and mandatory counseling sessions. Anti-abortion zealots have committed arson, assault, and murder in their campaign against abortion politics. A new generation of doctors who have never seen a woman die from a septic abortion or been haunted by the suicide of a patient denied help are increasingly reluctant to terminate pregnancies. But prohibition has never and will never work. It only makes abortion, a procedure with fewer complications than natural birth, a life-threatening one. Only 12% of medical schools teach first trimester abortion as a routine aspect of gynecology today, despite the evidence which shows that the number of abortions goes down when it is legal, safe, and accessible, and the number of maternal deaths goes up astronomically when it is not. Not to mention that prohibition is an insult to the rights of conscience of each and every woman. Strangely enough, the threat, and often the reality today, that women across this country do not have access to a legal and safe abortion has helped me sort through the ethical issues embedded in my own reproductive history. Was my abortion just? I would have to say yes, because I do believe every woman, including me, has a right to self-determination. Was it also a sign of my privilege, my class, and my upbringing? Yes. Am I happy to finally be able to tell the truth and to encourage other women to speak out and free themselves from shame? Yes. Is it ever wrong to give birth to a baby? Probably not. Although it's a tough question, because I know it's wrong to force a woman to give birth to a baby she doesn't want to bear. And it's just as wrong to force a woman to have an abortion, which is exactly what happened to my own grandmother. When she got pregnant around 40, her family expected her to not have the baby. She didn't have the resources to say no to the men in her life, and yes to herself. Instead, she submitted to their wishes and went into a long and deep depression afterwards. Is it ever wrong to have an abortion? Yes, as in my grandmother's case, when it was not her choice. But in today's climate, what's most important to remember is that Roe versus Wade reflects a common sense understanding of the real lives of real women, not abstract theological or philosophical ideas. And it provides an ample middle ground between extremists on both ends of the pro-life, pro-choice debate. Did you know that the writing and passage of Roe versus Wade was supported by religious leaders from most mainstream denominations, including the Southern Baptist Convention, the National Association of Evangelicals, the United Methodist Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Episcopal Church, and the Union for Reform Judaism. Even the Catholic Church didn't declare abortion a mortal sin until 1869, around the same time that doctors were taking control of women's reproductive health. And the declaration was more about maintaining the doctrine of papal infallibility than a result of any kind of agreement among bishops about when life begins. Today, because unfortunately the Republican Party has become the representative of the Catholic Church in an unholy alliance with the Evangelical Church on all issues related to human sexuality, including gay marriage, we must protect this fundamental human right of women. For many, many, many hundreds of years, the Catholic Church permitted abortion in the first trimester, and the English did too. Because people know the power of no and the underlying yes, the power of both to destroy and to save lives. No, women will not want to give birth to every baby they conceive. Yes, women still care about life. The Art of a Positive No is a book written by William Ury, a Harvard professor with a lifetime of experience in international conflict and negotiation. His thesis is that we forget the power and value of our deep no's, which are often in service of our essential and existential yeses. He recommends we all rediscover our deep no's. So I will leave you with several of those. No's which stand in service to the larger yes, which is the call to reproductive justice today. No, every sperm and every egg will not and need not become a baby. Yes, every child needs to be well cared for. No, every woman does not want or need to be a mother. Yes, many women will continue wanting to be mothers. No, every sexual act will not and need not create a baby. Yes, people will keep having sex to make babies. No, trusting women to control their own bodies will not lead to decreased population rates. Yes, trusting women to control their own bodies will increase women's capacity to care for the children they do have. No, trusting men to support their mothers, wives, lovers, girlfriends, aunts, and sisters as they make decisions about their shared offspring will not threaten the American family. Yes, including men in these decisions and encouraging men to tell their own stories about wanting and not wanting to take on the responsibility of parenting will create stronger and healthier American families. No, choosing an abortion does not mean a woman will not have another child. Yes, a majority of women who have abortions are already mothers and will give birth to more children. No, choosing an abortion does not make a woman a monster, a murderer, or a slut. Yes, choosing an abortion often means a woman is taking responsibility for her life and whatever children she already has and plans to have in the future. No, women enjoying sex is not dangerous. Yes, women have a right to enjoy sex and be protected from pregnancy so they can. No, men's responsibility should not only begin at birth. Yes, men should also share the financial responsibilities with women when they get pregnant. No, rich women don't deserve easier access to reproductive health care. Yes, all women deserve equal access to reproductive health care. So, how do we make this country and this world a place where all women can have the children they want, not have the children they don't want, and raise the children they have? First, we all tell our true stories. Then we let the outdated and irrelevant debate between choice and life die and rest in peace. You may want to come out and see the film Vessel this week, offered by our All Souls Team for Reproductive Justice. And finally, we start the new relevant conversations about reproductive justice now among ourselves. Because the time is now. The people are us. The issue is hot, and the women are waiting, but they can't wait too long. Amen.
Thanks for tuning in online. We are so pleased with all the different people who have been tuning in from all over the country and all over the world to our ministry and what we're doing at All Souls here in Tulsa. If you have a chance to send me an email or connect with me in some way, let me know what you're finding, why you tune in, and what you're getting out of it. I would love to hear from you. I'm always pleased when I get messages from different people who tell me all kinds of things about the impact of All Souls Tulsa's ministry on them and their lives and their families. And if you get a chance to make a gift to support this ministry, to become a partner, we would love to partner with you and have you be a friend of the church and somebody who is actually supporting us to create this congregation and the world that we're trying to create together. You can be a part of it, and every gift of every amount makes a difference. We really appreciate your support.